The dragon court dressed Liora Vale in the mourning shawl because dead brides were easier to believe than living princesses. The shawl waited on a black altar beneath the throne, folded like a piece of winter sky after fire had touched it. Its edges were grey with ancient ash, its threads thin as smoke, and across its surface ran faint silver lines that looked almost like veins. Every woman in Vaelrith knew what it was, the mourning shawl of the dragon brides. It was placed over women who had been chosen by the Dragon King and lost before the marriage flame could finish burning. 7 brides had worn it in death. 7 noble families had wept under black banners. 7 times, the court had whispered that King Vaelor Draven's bride bond was cursed. Now they wanted Liora to wear it while still breathing. She stood barefoot before the altar in a plain grey cloak, her wrists bound with ceremonial ash cord, her dark hair unbraided down her back because no royal hand had claimed the right to bind it. She had been dragged from the east servant's wing at dawn after telling a dying kitchen woman the truth of the lullaby she remembered from childhood. Not a servant's lullaby, a princess's cradle song. By noon, the court had heard. By sunset, they had decided to laugh. She claims ash, wing blood, Lady Morvessa Thorne said, and her voice carried through the throne hall with the perfect sorrow of a woman arranging a funeral. Then let the brides judge her. Soft laughter drifted from the nobles. Liora kept her chin lifted. That was the only crown they had not taken from her. At the far end of the hall, Dragon King Vaelor Draven sat on the obsidian throne beneath carved wings of black stone. He was 32, broad-shouldered, beautiful in the merciless way of drawn steel, with black hair falling near his jaw and eyes the color of molten amber behind smoke. He wore dark armor lined with dragon bone, but no bride ring hung from his hand. No bride had lived long enough to wear its match. The court feared him. Liora feared what he did not show. He had watched the entire accusation without speaking. One hand closed around the arm of his throne so tightly that black stone had cracked beneath his fingers. Morvessa stood beside the altar in a gown of deep red silk, her silver-black hair pinned with dragonbone needles. She was the king's aunt, the widow of the old regent, and the woman who had ruled the marriage record since Vaelor's first bride burned in her sleep. One needle near her temple held a bead of black ash. It pulsed once when Liora looked away. Liora saw it from the corner of her eye. So did Vaelor. For a heartbeat, his gaze sharpened. Then Morvessa turned back to the court. Liora Vale was taken into palace service as an abandoned child, fed by royal mercy, clothed by royal mercy, hidden from the cold by royal mercy. Yet she now claims descent from the Ashwing line, a line dead since the fall of the Western Eyrie. I claimed memory, Liora said. The laughter thinned. Morvessa looked at her. Memory is generous to those born with empty hands. Leora's fingers curled inside the ash cord. She remembered a woman's voice singing above the sound of wings. She remembered smoke under a red moon. She remembered being wrapped in something warm that smelled of rain, ash, and roses. Then years of kitchen soot, servant bells, and names given by people who preferred not to ask why a foundling child woke screaming whenever the dragon bells rang. Liora had not stood before the court to ask for a throne. She had only told the dying kitchen woman, "My mother called me Aureliane once." The name had emptied the room. Aureliane was not spoken in Vaelrith. It belonged to the last princess of the Ashwing blood, murdered with her mother during the Western Eyrie fire 17 years ago. Or so the court said. Vaelor rose from his throne. The hall quieted at once. His attention settled on Liora, heavy enough to feel like heat. Who told you that name? No one. Then how do you know it? The honest answer felt too fragile for that hall. I dream it when the dragon bells ring. Morvessa sighed gently. A servant's dream is not inheritance. Vaelor did not look at his aunt. I asked her. The words struck the court sharper than a blade. Liora looked at him despite herself. There was no tenderness in his face, no trust, but there was something else, something dangerously close to recognition, held back by years of watching women die for standing too near his crown. Morvesa's smile tightened. "Then let the shawl answer," she said. "If the girl is false, it will remain cold. If she carries bride ash, it will mark her as one more dead claim." Leora's breath caught. Bride ash. Not blood, not lineage. Death. The shawl was meant to reduce her to a warning. 2 guards pulled her forward. The throne hall smelled of smoke, wax, and winter rain. Nobles leaned closer, eager for the moment when the dead bride's cloth would prove a servant girl had mistaken grief for royalty. Morvesa lifted the mourning shawl. The hall cooled. 7 black candles around the altar lit by themselves, each flame bending toward Liora like a finger pointing at a grave. Vaelor stepped down 1 stair from the throne. Morvesa noticed. "Your Majesty?" His voice was low. "If it harms her before judgment, the rite ends." A ripple passed through the court. Liora felt it enter her chest and lodge there, painful and unwelcome. Protection was dangerous when it came too late. Morvesa bowed. "The dead bride's harm only lies." She placed the shawl over Leora's shoulders. For 1 breath, nothing happened. The court waited. Someone laughed softly. Then the shawl tightened. Liora gasped as cold ash pressed into her skin. The silver lines across the cloth began to glow, not white, but red gold, like embers waking beneath funeral dust. Heat spread down her spine. Morvesa stepped back too quickly. Vaelor saw. The first thread lifted from the shawl and curled into the air behind Liora. Then another. Then 100. The cloth did not burn away. It unfolded. Ash burst from its seams in twin arcs, rising behind Leora's shoulders like wings made of smoke, flame, and broken feathers. The hall erupted. Nobles stumbled back. The 7 black candles flared high, and inside each flame appeared the face of a dead bride. Not weeping, watching. Vaelor came fully to his feet. The obsidian throne behind him groaned as if recognizing pain. Liora stood frozen beneath the weight of impossible wings, her body shaking, her eyes wide with the terror of a girl who had spent her life trying to be small and had suddenly filled the hall with fire. A voice spoke from the shawl. 7 women speaking as one. Not false. Morvesa's face went pale. The ash wings spread wider. Across their burning feathers, silver lines shifted into a map. Hidden chambers, sealed corridors, names buried beneath bride records, and a path leading from the western eyrie to the palace nursery. Vaelor stared at the map, then at Liora. The dead bride spoke again, and this time every stone in the throne hall seemed to listen. Last ash, wing air. Leora's knees nearly failed. Vaelor stepped toward her, not as king, as a man seeing the shape of a curse for the first time. Morvesa's black ash bead cracked against her temple, and from inside it, a woman's scream escaped. The mourning shawl was not mourning cloth. It was a map made from the last wings of women who had died hiding her. The scream from Morvesa's ash bead did not sound human. It sounded like wings tearing. Every noble in the dragon court heard it. Every guard froze with one hand on a spear. Even the black candles bowed their flames away from Lady Morvesa Thorn, as if the dead brides recognized the scent of the woman who had helped bury them. Morvesa's hand flew to the bead at her temple. Too late. The bead split down the center and released a thin coil of black smoke. Inside, the smoke flickered the image of a woman kneeling in fire, her back torn where wings should have been. Her mouth opened again, but no sound came this time. Only ash poured out, scattering across the marble like powdered bone. Liora could not move. The living ash wings behind her pulsed with heat, huge and unsteady, their feathers made of embered cloth, ghost fire, and silver lines that kept shifting into corridors she had never seen and somehow remembered. Every breath made them tremble. Every tremor sent more memories breaking through her. A nursery ceiling painted with red dragons. A woman's hand pressing a kiss to Leora's brow. A shawl wrapped around her infant body while the palace burned behind them. Then blood on stone. Then silence. Vaelor stepped down the last stair from the throne. "Morvesa," he said. Only her name. The entire hall went colder. Morvessa lowered her hand from the broken bead. Her face had regained its elegance, but the blood had left her lips. A relic can be corrupted, Your Majesty. The ash wings flared. The 7 dead brides' faces in the candle flames turned toward her. Vaelor did not look at the candles. His eyes remained on his aunt. You told me the shawl answered only bride, death. It does. Then why did it name her heir? Morvessa's gaze shifted to Liora. Not fear now. Calculation. Because ash, wing blood was always bound to bride, death, she said, raising her voice for the court. That is why the line was extinguished. That is why your father sealed the Western Eyrie. That is why 7 women died trying to stand near your throne. The girl is not salvation. She is the old curse wearing a servant's face. The nobles recoiled from Liora as one body. The wings burned hotter. Liora felt their fear like wind against flame. For years, they had looked through her when she carried trays, swept ash, knelt beside dying hearths, or stitched torn cuffs in the servants' corridor. Now they looked at her as if she had entered the hall holding a plague. That hurt more than the heat, not because she wanted their love, because their fear fit too easily over her life. Vaelor saw her shoulders tighten beneath the shawl. His expression changed for one breath, so quickly the court might have missed it. Liora did not. He had been feared all his life too, but kings turned fear into armor. Servant girls had to swallow it. Morvessa lifted her chin. Remove the shawl before the wings finish binding. If she is what the relic claims, she will call the bride flame whether she means to or not. A lord near the council dais whispered, The bride flame killed Lady Avalis. Another answered, And Marith, and Soria. Names moved through the court like sparks finding dry cloth. 7 dead brides. 7 families. 7 griefs ready to be turned against one living girl. Vaelor extended one hand toward Liora. Can you remove it? Liora looked at the ash wings burning from her shoulders. They did not feel attached to her flesh. Not exactly. They felt like hands holding her up from behind. Many hands. Burned hands. Protective hands. I don't know, she said. Her voice shook, and she hated that everyone heard it. Morvessa seized the weakness. You see? She cannot command it. I did not ask if she could command it, Vaelor said. I asked if she could remove it. Liora slowly reached for the clasp at her throat. The moment her fingers touched it, the hall vanished. Not fully, not physically, but her sight plunged into fire. She stood in a corridor of smoke while women ran past her in bridal gowns burning at the hems. One had golden hair braided with pearls. One had brown skin glowing with dragon scale tattoos. One held a knife in her own ribs and smiled through tears. Another carried something small and wrapped in grey cloth. A baby. Liora tried to move toward her. The woman turned. Her face was pale, fierce, and streaked with ash. I carried you from the nursery, she whispered, but I was not your mother. Leora's breath broke. Who was? The vision shuddered as something roared beyond the corridor. The bride looked over her shoulder. The woman who gave us her wings. Then fire swallowed her. Liora snapped back into the throne hall with a cry. The wings behind her collapsed inward, shielding her from view. For one terrible heartbeat, she was hidden inside a cage of burning feathers, alone with the smell of ash and roses. Vaelor reached her before the guards. Liora. Her name in his mouth made the wings open an inch. He stood close enough for her to see the faint gold cracks around his pupils, as if a dragon slept behind his eyes and had just woken hungry. Tell me what you saw, he said. Not gently, carefully, like a man approaching a wounded creature that might set the world on fire. Liora swallowed. The brides were not dying for you. A ripple went through the court. Vaelor went still. Liora looked past him to Morvessa. They were dying for me. Morvessa laughed once, sharp and cold. A convenient vision. The 7 candle flames rose high. The dead brides spoke together. Witness required. The words struck the hall like a bell. Vaelor turned to the candles. What witness? The ash wings behind Liora lifted and pointed, every burning feather angling toward the black altar beneath the throne. Not the shawl. Beneath it. Vaelor's face hardened. He gestured to two guards. Move the altar. Morvessa stepped forward. No. That single word betrayed her more than any scream. Vaelor looked at her. Aunt, he said softly, move aside. For the first time since Liora had entered the hall, Morvessa's composure cracked. You do not understand what your father buried. Then I will. The guards approached the altar. Morvessa raised her hand. Black ash burst from her sleeve and struck the floor in a jagged circle around Liora. The living wings flared, but the ash circle tightened like a chain, dragging heat from the air and forcing the burning feathers lower. Liora gasped as the shawl clenched around her throat. Vaelor drew his sword. The blade ignited with dark dragon fire. Every noble fell back. Morvessa's eyes shone with furious grief. I kept your throne alive, Vaelor. I fed it brides because the ash wing line would have fed it kings. The hall went silent. Vaelor's sword lowered a fraction. Fed it? Liora heard it then. Beneath the altar, a heartbeat. Not human, not dragon. Something trapped under stone, beating in time with the burning shawl. The ash wings around her unfolded despite the circle, each feather turning toward the hidden sound. The dead brides whispered from the candles. Open the bride, grave. Morvessa's black ash chain snapped tight around Liora's ribs. Vaelor stepped into the circle and took the burning edge of the shawl in his bare hand. The court screamed as living flame climbed his armor. He did not let go. His eyes locked on Liora's. Stay standing, he said. The stone beneath the altar cracked open, and from below the throne, 7 severed wing bones rose from the dark. The 7 wing bones rose one by one, white as moon-bleached knives. They did not belong to dragons. That was the first thing Liora understood, though no one had told her. Dragon bones were vast, ridged, armored by old fire. These were smaller, more delicate, curved like the frame of something once living between woman and flame. Bride wings. The court stared in horror as the bones lifted from beneath the cracked altar, each wrapped in black ash thread, each marked with a bride's name burned into the surface. Arvelis, Merith, Soria, Veliane, Cressa, Nimera, Tarlin. 7 names. 7 dead women. 7 brides the kingdom had mourned as victims of Vaelor's cursed bride bond. Liora's ash wings trembled behind her, and the bones trembled in answer. Vaelor still stood inside Morvessa's ash circle, his bare hand gripping the burning edge of the shawl. Flame climbed over his gauntlet and licked beneath his armor, but he did not release it. His jaw was tight enough to crack stone. What is this? He asked. Morvessa's eyes moved from the bones to the court, measuring how much truth could still be turned into fear. A safeguard, she said. One noble woman sobbed it. Vaelor's voice dropped. Against whom? Morvessa looked at Liora. The answer filled the hall before she spoke it. The ash chain around Liora's ribs tightened. Pain forced her breath shallow. The living wings rose higher, trying to break the circle, but the black ash fed on their heat. It did not smother them. It drank them. Liora suddenly knew why the brides had died. Not because they failed the Dragon King, because something under his throne had needed fire. Vaelor knew it too. His dragonfire sword blazed darker. Morvessa lifted both hands, and the ash thread around the wing bones stretched toward the throne like veins. Your father found the truth after the Western Eyrie burned. The ash wing line had not died with Queen Aureliane. 1 child survived. 1 heir, hidden beneath bride smoke, carried away by traitors who believed old blood should return to the throne. Liora's heart struck hard against her ribs. Aureliane, the name she had dreamed. Not hers. Her mother's. Morvessa continued, her voice gaining strength now that terror had entered the court. If that child lived, every dragon oath made after the fall would become unstable. Every noble marriage tied to the throne could be challenged. Every bride chosen for Vaelor would be measured against a bloodline that should have been ash. Liora looked at the wing bones. "The brides knew," she whispered. The candle flames flickered. 7 faces turned toward her. Morvesa's mouth hardened. They suspected. Each one followed fragments. Each one found part of the hidden map. Each one thought love would give her the right to dig beneath a throne. Vaelor turned slowly toward his aunt. His face was terrible now. Not loud, not uncontrolled. Terrible, because all the grief he had swallowed for years had found a target and did not yet know whether it could survive striking. "You told me they died because my bond burned them." "They died because they put their hands where queens had forbidden them. You let me believe I killed them." Morvesa's expression tightened. For the first time, pain touched her calculation. "I let you live with guilt because guilt made you cautious. Caution kept you from choosing another bride too soon. Every bride who came close to the truth threatened to wake what your father buried." Vaelor stepped toward her. The ash circle flared, burning around his boots. He did not stop. "And you chose them anyway," he said. "You brought them to me. You smiled beside them at betrothal feasts. You watched them die." Morvesa's eyes flashed. "I watched a kingdom survive." Liora could barely hear them through the heartbeat beneath the throne. It grew louder with every pulse of the shawl. The severed wing bones turned toward her like compass needles. Then the map across her ash wings shifted. The silver lines no longer showed corridors. They showed bodies. 7 brides running through different nights, each carrying a scrap of burning cloth, each one entering a hidden passage beneath the dragon court, each one finding the same chamber, each one kneeling before a cradle carved into black stone. An empty cradle. No, not empty. Liora saw a gray bundle inside it. A baby wrapped in ash cloth, sleeping through the roar of fire. Every bride had reached for the child. Every bride had added something to the shawl. A feather of flame, a thread of blood, a final memory. They had not all found her in the same night. They had found pieces of the map over years, each discovering that the hidden princess had been moved, disguised, renamed, buried among servants. Each bride had tried to protect the trail before Morvesa found it, and each had paid with her wings. Leora's knees shook. "I was here," she whispered. Vaelor heard. His fury turned toward her with sudden attention. "What?" She looked at the cracked altar. "Not only in the western eyrie. I was hidden under the throne." The court recoiled. The black altar split wider. Beneath it lay a hollow chamber lined with dragon bone. At its center rested a cradle of charred obsidian, small enough for an infant, covered in ash that had not scattered in 17 years. Above the cradle hung a chain of old bride rings. 7 rings. 1 empty hook. Vaelor stared at it. Then his face changed. Liora saw the moment he understood something worse than murder. The throne had not been searching for brides. It had been testing them. Each woman brought near Vaelor had awakened part of the hidden map because each bride had been chosen from families tied to the old Ashwing refuge. Morvesa had used Vaelor's marriage line as bait, letting the throne expose women who carried knowledge, loyalty, or blood memories of Leora's survival. The curse was not on Vaelor's bride bond. It was on the search for the lost heir. Morvesa saw understanding spreading across his face and struck. She drove her cane against the floor. Black ash exploded from its dragon bone head, forming hooked chains that shot toward Leora's burning wings. One chain caught the left wing, another caught the right. The pain was immediate, savage, not like cloth tearing, but like hands ripping memory away. Liora cried out. Vaelor moved before thought. He cut the first ash chain with dragonfire. The court gasped as the severed chain screamed with a woman's voice. Morvesa shouted, "Touch those wings, and the throne will mark you traitor to your own blood." Vaelor cut the second chain. The living wing flared free. His armor smoked. Blood ran from his palm where he still held the shawl. The heat should have burned him to bone. Instead, The Ashwings bent toward him as if recognizing the first king who had touched them without trying to own them. Liora stared at him. He looked back at her, breathing hard. "Can you walk?" It was not the question of a king ordering a servant aside. It was the question of a man standing inside a burning lie and choosing who he would protect first. Liora swallowed the pain. "I can stand." His eyes darkened. "That is not what I asked." Something in her chest twisted. Not romance. Not trust. A dangerous thing before both. The Ashwings gave one great beat. The black circle around her shattered. For a moment, Liora rose an inch above the floor, lifted not by power she controlled, but by the dead women refusing to let her kneel. The 7 severed wing bones around the altar ignited with white fire, and the candle bride spoke in a single command. "Take back the 8th ring." The empty hook above the cradle trembled. Morvesa's face went bloodless. Vaelor turned toward the bride rings. On the 8th hook, where nothing had hung a moment before, fire curled into a shape, a ring of ash and living gold. It floated toward Liora. The court fell to its knees in terror. Morvesa screamed, "Do not let it touch her!" Vaelor stepped between the court and Liora, sword raised. But the ring did not fly to Leora's hand. It flew to the hollow at the base of her throat. The moment it touched her skin, the ash wings opened fully behind her, vast enough to darken the throne. And a woman's voice, fierce and broken with love, whispered from inside the fire. "My daughter, my daughter." The words came from the ring at Leora's throat, but they did not stay there. They spread through her bones. The throne hall vanished under a rush of burning wind, and Liora was no longer standing before nobles, ash chains, and a king with blood on his hand. She was standing in a chamber of red stone, held against a woman's chest while the world collapsed beyond the walls. The woman had Leora's eyes, soft grey, but brighter, older, fiercer, full of a grief that had already chosen sacrifice. Queen Aureliane Vael stood barefoot in the western airy nursery, her dark hair unbound, her back bleeding where 2 enormous ash wings had been cut nearly to the bone. Flames roared beyond the windows. Dragons screamed somewhere in the night. A baby cried once, then stopped when the queen pressed her lips to the child's brow. "Do not remember the fire first," Aureliane whispered. "Remember my voice." Liora could not breathe. She knew this was memory. She knew the body in the queen's arms was smaller, softer, infant, helpless. But grief did not care about time. It moved through her as if she had lost her mother yesterday. Another woman rushed into the chamber wearing a half-burned bridal gown. The same bride from the vision. She held the grey shawl open. "My queen," the bride said, sobbing. "The lower passage is lost." "Then take her beneath the throne." "The Dragon Court?" Aureliane smiled with terrible bitterness. "Men guard what they believe they own. They never think to search beneath it." The bride bowed her head. Behind them, a great black shadow struck the nursery doors. Aureliane turned, and her torn wings lifted, not whole enough to fly, but still burning. "Her name is Liora," she said. "Not Aureliane. Not yet. Hide the crown. Name until the shawl finds her." The bride took the baby. The doors cracked. The bride looked down at the child. "And if the court makes her wear it?" Aureliane's eyes filled with fire. "Then let them dress my daughter in mourning and watch the dead return her wings." The memory shattered. Liora came back to the throne hall with a sound caught between a sob and a breath. The ring at her throat glowed like a small sun beneath her skin. Her ash wings still stretched behind her, but now they no longer trembled as if held by other women alone. Something in them knew her. Not fully, not obediently, but as blood knows its own heat. Vaelor stood close, one hand still bleeding around the burned edge of the shawl. His face had changed. The suspicion had not vanished, but it had been forced to kneel beneath horror. "You saw her," he said. Liora nodded once. "My mother." The word almost broke her. Morvesa recovered first. "Convenient ghosts," she said, but her voice had lost its clean edge. "Convenient memories. A dead queen can be made to say anything by forbidden blood. The 7 bride candles flared violently. Vaelor looked at his aunt. Speak another lie, and I will let the dead answer it. Morvesa's nostrils flared. The nobles had begun whispering again, but not with mockery now. Fear moved differently when it no longer knew where to kneel. Some stared at Leora's wings. Some stared at the cradle beneath the altar. Some stared at Vaelor, waiting to see whether their king would condemn the girl or claim the miracle. Liora hated both possibilities. She did not want to be condemned, but she did not want to be claimed because the dead had made her valuable. The ash ring at her throat burned softly. The bright flames whispered, "Blood is named. Map is waking. Passage remains." Vaelor turned back to the cracked hollow beneath the altar. What passage? The silver map lines across Leora's wings shifted again, drawing the hall, the throne, the cradle, then a hidden stair descending below the dragon court into darkness shaped like an open mouth. Morvesa went very still. Vaelor saw it. There is more under the throne. There are old foundations under every throne, Morvesa said. Not like this. Liora felt the map tug at her shoulders, pointing not only toward the hidden stair, but toward Vaelor himself. A thread of ash light ran from her right wing to the center of his breastplate, where a black dragon sigil had been carved over his heart. The sigil cracked. Vaelor looked down sharply. Dark fire seeped from the fracture, not outward, but inward, as though something inside his chest had been starving and suddenly smelled flame. The court gasped. Morvesa smiled. It was small, triumphant. "There," she whispered. Now the girl sees the truth of him. Vaelor's jaw locked. Silence. No, let her see. Morvesa turned to Liora. You think he is only a king trapped in my lies? Ask what happens to brides who stand too close when his dragon wakes hungry. Vaelor did not move. That told Liora more than denial would have. The ash thread between her wing and his sigil brightened. For an instant, she saw beneath his armor not his body, but a hidden shape curled around his ribs. A dragon shadow, vast and black, chained by molten gold hooks driven through its wings. It opened one eye. Pain flooded the hall. Not everyone felt it. Liora did. It was Vaelor's. Years of control. Years of believing his desire killed women. Years of holding himself so cold that even his own dragon had learned to starve quietly rather than reach for warmth. His secret was not that his bride bond was cursed. It was that his dragon had been chained to the bride grave beneath the throne. Every woman brought near him had stirred the hidden Ashwing map. Every time the map awakened, the chain inside Vaelor tightened and the bride flame consumed the woman before she could speak. Liora looked at him. He looked back as if waiting for the fear he deserved. She gave it to him honestly. Then she did not step away. Vaelor's throat moved. Morvesa's expression sharpened with irritation. Do not mistake restraint for virtue, girl. He could burn you without meaning to. I know, Liora said. The answer surprised even her. The ash wings curved slightly around her, not hiding her, but holding the space between them. Vaelor's voice was low. You should stand farther from me. Probably. Then do it. Leora's fingers rose to the ring at her throat. Is that a king's command? His eyes darkened. No. Then I heard it as fear. A dangerous silence fell. For one heartbeat, the court forgot Morvesa, the cradle, even the dead brides. They watched the forgotten princess and the Dragon King stand in the burning aftermath of truth, both wounded by the same throne, both too proud to reach and too honest to lie about the danger. Then the stone beneath the altar groaned. The hidden stair opened fully. Cold air breathed up from below, carrying the smell of old smoke, dragon blood, and roses left too long on a grave. The 7 wing bones turned toward the stair. The bride flames whispered again. Passage remain. Morvesa raised her cane. No one goes below. Vaelor lifted his sword. Idu. If you enter the bride, grave with her, the throne chain will wake. Then let it. Morvesa's calm broke completely. It will kill you. Vaelor's eyes flickered toward Liora, then away before the court could name the look. "It has been killing others in my place." He stepped toward the stair. Liora moved to follow. Vaelor stopped. "No." She looked at him. The ash wings behind her flared not violently, but in warning. Vaelor exhaled slowly. "Liora, whatever is below was built to use you. Everything above was built to erase me." He had no answer for that. Morvesa gave a sharp command to the guards. "Seize the girl." No one moved at first. Then one guard, more afraid of Morvesa than miracles, lunged toward Liora's arm. Vaelor's dragon shadow hit the floor before the guard touched her. It was not fully visible, only a massive shape of black fire and wingbone erupting behind him. The guard flew backward without a wound, thrown by heat and warning alone. The court dropped to its knees. Vaelor looked shaken by what he had released. Liora looked at the shadow. It turned its vast head toward her. The chained dragon inside the king's blood bowed 1 inch. Not surrender. Recognition. The ash ring at her throat answered with a burst of white flame. Below the throne, something ancient woke and began to breathe. Morvesa whispered, almost to herself. "No, the throne has found her." The hidden stair lit from below. On each step, a dead bride's name burned in living ash. Liora looked once at Vaelor. He stood at the edge of the stair with his sword burning dark, his face hard, his eyes wounded enough to be dangerous. "I'm going down," she said. After a long moment, he stepped aside. Not to allow her, to walk beside her. Together, they descended into the bride grave beneath the dragon throne. And above them, the empty cradle began to rock. The stair beneath the dragon throne descended like a wound cut into the mountain. Each step burned with a bride's name. Avelis, Marith, Soria, Veliane, Cressa, Nimera, Darlin. Liora felt every name under her bare feet as if the dead women had become lamps, guiding her down into the place that had swallowed them. Her ash wings trailed behind her, too wide for the narrow stair, yet they passed through the black stone like smoke through memory. Vaelor walked at her side with his dragonfire sword lowered but ready. The flame along the blade was dark, almost blue at the edges, and it gave no warmth. Above them, the court still murmured in terror. Morvesa's voice rose once, sharp with command, but no one followed them down. Not yet. The deeper Liora went, the louder the rocking became. A cradle. She heard it before she saw it. At the bottom of the stair, the passage opened into a chamber hidden directly beneath the throne hall. Dragonbone roots curled through the ceiling. Old ash covered the floor in pale drifts. 7 sealed archways circled the room, each made of smoky glass. Behind them stood shadows of women in burned bridal gowns. The dead brides. They watched Liora without hatred. That made it harder to breathe. At the center of the chamber stood an obsidian cradle suspended over a pit of red-black ash. A chain ran down from the ceiling, through the cradle, and into the darkness below. Every time the cradle rocked, the chain pulled tight. Vaelor flinched. Liora turned to him. "It is tied to you." His jaw tightened. "Yes." The answer was too quiet. A pulse came from beneath the cradle. Not a heartbeat. A hunger. The ash in the pit stirred. Slowly, something rose from it. A black gold heart wrapped in bride rings and old chains, cracked down the middle, glowing with a sick red flame. It was not alive, but it beat as if it had learned to imitate life. The throne heart. Liora's wings recoiled. Vaelor stepped in front of her before he seemed to choose it. The chain snapped tight again. This time, he dropped to one knee. His sword struck the floor. Dark fire crawled under his armor and up the black dragon sigil carved over his chest. Liora reached toward him. "Don't," he said through clenched teeth. She froze. The warning was not pride. It was fear. A shadow erupted behind him, a vast black dragon shape, half-formed and chained by molten gold hooks through its wings. The creature opened one eye, and Liora felt its pain like heat behind her ribs. Vaelor's secret stood before her now. His dragon had not killed the brides by desire. It had been chained to the thing under the throne. Morvesa's voice came from the stair above. Now you understand why he was never meant to stand near an Ashwing heir. Liora looked up. Morvesa descended with 2 council guards behind her, her black cane in hand, her face calm again but her eyes bright with fear. Your mother ran from the old pact. She stole you from the throne before it could bind you. Since then, the heart has searched for what was denied. Liora stared at the rocking cradle. Me? Yes. Morvesa's voice sharpened. You think this is cruelty because you have never held a realm together while old bloodlines tore it apart. The Draven kings carried dragon fire. The Vale queens carried ash wings. Together, they fed the throne heart and kept Vaelorith whole. Vaelor forced himself to stand. Fed it with brides? Morvesa looked at him then, and for one moment, something like grief passed through her face. With necessity, the 7 bride shadows behind the glass lifted their burned hands. A voice spoke from the first archway. Arvelis. We were not necessity. Another voice followed. Marith. We were witnesses. The smoky glass cracked. Leora's wings brightened. Morvesa struck her cane against the floor. Black ash spread from it in a thin circle, trying to seal the archways again. They found pieces of the hidden map. They would have exposed the air before the kingdom was ready. Vaelor's eyes darkened. So you let me believe I killed them. I let you survive the guilt, Morvesa said. Without it, you would have chosen again, and each bride who came near you brought the map closer to waking. The words hit the chamber like falling stone. Liora understood. The brides had not died because Vaelor loved them. They died because they followed the ash map toward her, because they discovered pieces of the truth, because Morvesa used the Dragon King's cursed bride bond as a cover for murder. The bride shadow behind the last archway stepped forward. Darlene. Her gown was burned open at the back, where wings should have been. I found the cradle, she said. I found the royal name sewn beneath the shawl. I sent word to the king. Vaelor went still. Talon looked at Morvesa, but the message never reached him. Morvesa's mouth hardened. Vaelor's voice was almost nothing. You took it. I protected the throne. You protected my ignorance. The throne heart beat harder. The chain through the cradle tightened again, and the molten hooks in Vaelor's dragon shadow tore deeper. He staggered, but did not kneel this time. Leora's ash wings spread behind her. Across them, the map changed. The silver lines no longer showed corridors. They formed a circle. Bride rings, throne, chain, dragon, heart, ash, wings, king's blood, and one hidden word buried beneath soot. Morvesa saw it and went pale. Do not read that. Vaelor turned to Liora, pain bright in his eyes. Can you? I don't know. The honest answer trembled between them. He nodded once. Then try. No command. Only trust given too early and too dangerously. Liora stepped toward the throne heart. The dead brides placed their palms against the cracked glass. The hidden word on her wings began to burn clearer. Morvesa lifted her cane. If she wakes that name, your dragon may die. Vaelor did not look away from Liora. Then I should have known its name before I was chained to it. The ash under Leora's feet rose in a slow spiral. She read the burning word aloud. Ilarion. The throne heart split open. Inside it, a small dragon made of ash, bride bones, and broken rings opened its ancient eyes. And it whispered, like a starving child remembering a mother's voice, Daughter? The word daughter did not belong in a monster's mouth. Yet it came from the ash dragon with such broken hunger that Liora could not move. Ilarion crouched inside the split throne heart, small enough to fit beneath the cradle, yet old enough to make the chamber bow around it. Its ribs were made from bride bones. Its teeth were broken bride rings. Ash clung to its body like skin that had forgotten how to heal. In its chest burned one red flame, weak and trembling. The dead brides behind the cracked glass wept without tears. Vaelor stared at the creature. his face carved from control and pain. His dragon shadow towered behind him, still chained by molten hooks, but its anger had changed. It no longer snarled at Ilarion. It recognized it. Morvessa came down the last step. "Do not pity it." Liora looked at her. "What is it?" "A mistake that kept a kingdom alive." The bride named Avalis pressed both palms to the cracked glass. "It was not born a mistake." The chamber dimmed. Ilarion lifted its head toward Avilas, and one bride bone in its chest trembled as if remembering where it belonged. Marith spoke next. It was the first pact. Dragonfire and Ashwing, king and queen. Protection, not hunger. Soria's burned mouth tightened. Then kings grew afraid of empty cradles. Regents grew afraid of free queens. Councils rewrote vows until the throne learned to feed. Morvessa's cane struck the floor. Enough. But the brides had been silent too long. Talon stepped close to the glass, her back scarred where her wings had been cut away. "We were not killed by the Dragon King's desire. We were killed because each of us found a piece of the map leading to Liora." Vaelor closed his eyes once. The movement was small. The damage was not. For years he had lived as a man cursed to burn women who stood too near him. Every bride death had become another chain around his restraint, another reason not to touch, not to hope, not to want. Liora felt the shape of his loneliness and hated that she could understand it. Morvessa seized the silence. "And if I had not stopped them, Vaelrith would have torn itself apart over a child with forbidden wings. Your mother knew what you were, Liora. That is why she ran. My mother ran because you wanted to feed me to this." "No," Morvessa snapped, "because the throne required the old line restored." Vaelor's voice cut through the chamber. "Required, or demanded after you taught it hunger." Morvessa looked at him, and for one heartbeat she seemed older than her bones. "You speak like a man who never watched borders burn. I speak like a man you chained as a boy." That silenced her. Liora turned sharply toward him. Vaelor did not look at her, but the ash map on her wings answered the truth before he could hide it. A vision flashed across the living feathers. Vaelor at 15, kneeling in this chamber while the old king and Morvessa pressed the black dragon sigil into his chest with molten gold. His young dragon shadow thrashed behind him as hooks drove through its wings. "A king must feed what keeps the realm alive," his father had said. Morvessa had whispered, "and must never love what the throne may hunger for." The vision vanished. Leora's throat tightened. "You were a child." Vaelor's face remained still. "So were you." The words settled between them, binding more than comfort could. Ilarion whimpered. The final chain around its throat tightened, and Vaelor's dragon shadow arched in pain. The same chain ran through the cradle, through the throne heart, and into the sigil over his chest. Morvessa's eyes gleamed with hard triumph. "The bride's bones can be returned by name, but the last chain is Draven blood. Only the king can release it." Vaelor understood before Liora did. He lowered his sword. "No," Liora said. He looked at her then. No softness. No grand sacrifice. Only exhaustion made noble by necessity. "If it takes me, it stops taking women. That is not a law," she said. "That is another hunger wearing mercy." Something flickered in his eyes. Morvessa laughed sharply. "A servant girl lectures kings on law." Liora turned on her. "A hidden princess reads what regents buried." The ash wings flared. The cradle rocked once above the pit. Not violently, like it had heard her. Liora stepped toward it. The chain tightened, dragging Vaelor half a step with it, but he stayed standing, his jaw locked against the pain. Morvessa's composure cracked. "Do not touch that cradle." "There." Fear. Liora placed both hands on the obsidian edge. A memory opened beneath her palms. A Draven king and a Vale queen stood in this same chamber centuries ago, not as captor and offering, but side by side. The queen wrapped ash wings around a newborn child. The king laid dragon fire at the chamber's edge. Together, they spoke the first vow. The throne protects what love creates. It does not consume it. The memory broke into another, later kings removing words, frightened councils sealing lines, regents turning protection into possession. Then Queen Aureliane, bleeding and desperate, hiding one final stitch beneath the cradle cloth before sending her daughter away. Liora gasped and came back to the bride grave. Her fingers dug through the ash inside the cradle until they found fabric, a small grey strip, part of the cloth that had wrapped her as an infant. Burned red thread crossed it in her mother's hand. Mourning went white. That was destroyed. Liora unfolded it. The chamber held its breath. She read the stitched words aloud. No throne may claim a child whose mother named her free. The cradle stopped rocking. The final chain cracked. Vaelor fell to one knee, but this time the pain leaving him looked like fire being pulled from a wound. Ilarion lowered its ash-covered head to the cradle and whispered again, "Not daughter now. Free." The molten hooks in Vaelor's dragon shadow loosened. Mourves's face twisted with panic. "If that vow stands," she hissed, "every oath built on Aureliane's death collapses." Vaelor forced himself upright, breathing hard, then let false oaths fall. The bride glass shattered. 7 dead brides stepped into the chamber with restored wing light burning faintly behind them. Not alive, not dead as the court had named them. Witnesses. They stood behind Liora. Mourning raised her cane. Black ash spiraled around its dragonbone head, forming a blade. "Then I will cut the free child before the throne learns to kneel." Vaelor moved first, but Liora lifted the grey cloth in both hands. The old vow blazed across the bride grave, and every false oath carved into the chamber walls turned toward Mourning like burning eyes. The false oaths opened their eyes. They were not human eyes, but burning marks carved into the bride grave walls, old promises made over murdered brides, sealed records, stolen wing bones, and a child's false death. One by one, the runes peeled from the black stone and turned toward Mourning. She stepped back. For the first time, the woman who had arranged 7 bride deaths looked afraid of the law she loved. Vaelor stood between her and Liora, sword raised, but the blade shook in his bleeding hand. The chain between his sigil and Ilarion had cracked, not broken. Every breath dragged fire through him. Behind him, his dragon shadow lifted its wounded wings, the molten hooks loose but still embedded. Liora saw the cost of his restraint. She also saw the choice he would make if she let him. He would throw himself at Mourning, tear the false oaths apart with dragon fire, and let the chain finish killing him if it kept her safe. That was not freedom. That was another throne demanding sacrifice under a better name. "Vaelor," she said. He did not look away from Mourning. "Stay behind me." No. The words struck him harder than warning. Liora stepped beside him. Not behind. The ash wings burned wide at her back, thin from strain but steady. The 7 bride spirits stood behind her, their restored wing light dim, yet enough to fill the chamber with silver ash. Ilarion curled near the cradle, smaller now, watching with its old, wounded eyes. Mourves's grip tightened on her cane. "Look at yourselves, a chained king, a half-burned girl, and ghosts pretending they can rule the living." "We do not want to rule them," Liora said. "Then what do you want?" Liora looked up the stair toward the court above. Nobles watched from the broken steps, pale and silent. The dragon throne was still groaning overhead, its foundations cracking as false oaths loosened from stone. "I want every name you buried returned before the court." Mourning laughed. "Names do not rebuild kingdoms." "No," Vaelor said, voice rough with pain. "But lies rot them." The old runes flared brighter. Mourning saw the court listening. Her expression shifted, becoming colder, cleaner, more dangerous. She lifted her cane and struck her own palm against its dragonbone head. Black blood ran down the shaft. "Then hear this name first," she said. "Aureliane Vael, Queen of Ash Wings. Oath, breaker, pact, thief, mother of the child who would unmake Vaelrith. The chamber shuddered. Leora's wings bent inward as if struck. Morvessa turned toward the watching nobles. That is the truth they hide beneath pretty grief. Aureliane broke the old pact. She stole the heir from the throne. Every war that followed, every bride that burned, every border that weakened began with her refusal. The nobles murmured. Fear was easy to stir when survival wore the face of accusation. Liora felt the old wound open, not only forgotten, but blamed for living. The grey cloth in her hand warmed. No throne may claim a child whose mother named her free. She looked at Morvessa. My mother refused to feed a baby to stone. She refused duty. She refused ownership. Morvessa's face hardened. A queen belongs to her realm. A queen serves her realm, Liora said. She does not become meat for it. The bridegrave answered with a deep pulse. The false oath circled Morvessa, closer now. One burned brighter than the rest, and opened like a strip of living record. Inside it, the court saw Talon's final night. The last bride stood before Morvessa, alive, holding the grey shawl and the hidden cradle cloth. Talon's voice shook, but she did not bow. The child lives, Talon said in the memory. The throne has no claim. Aureliane named her free. Morvessa's younger face went still. Then she smiled. Not with triumph, with decision. The memory showed the cane rising, the ash blade cutting, Talon falling to her knees as her wing light tore from her back and flew into the shawl. Her last act was not to curse. It was to sew the final thread tighter before Morvessa could see where she had hidden it. The memory vanished. The chamber was silent. Talon stood behind Liora, tears of light moving down her face. Morvessa did not deny it. She looked at Vaelor instead. I did what your father lacked the spine to finish. Vaelor's sword lowered. For a terrifying second, Liora thought grief had broken him. Then he raised his head. No, he said. You did what cowards always do. You murdered the witness and called it law. The false oaths surged. Morvessa swung her cane, releasing a storm of black ash. It struck the runes and scattered several into sparks. The bridegrave cracked. Above them, stone thundered as part of the throne dais collapsed into the hidden chamber. Nobles screamed. The dragon throne began to sink. Morvessa smiled through the ash storm. If the throne falls, Vaelrith falls with it. Vaelor turned toward the collapsing ceiling. His face changed. King first. Wounded man second. Liora saw the decision before he spoke it. He would hold the throne up with his chained dragon if he had to. This time, she caught his wrist. Fire leapt between them. His eyes snapped to hers. Do not spend yourself alone, she said. His jaw clenched. The court is above us, and the brides are below it, and I am beside you. For one breath, he stared at her, as if the word beside was more dangerous than love. Then he turned his wrist and, slowly, closed his hand around hers. The ash wings behind Liora flared. Vaelor's dragon shadow spread its wounded wings. Ilarion lifted its head beside the cradle. The dead brides raised their hands. Together, not as sacrifice but witness, they sent fire upward. Ashwing light and dragon fire struck the sinking throne from below. The black stone stopped falling inches above the stair, suspended in a blaze of gold, silver, and red ash. The court above saw it all, the hidden princess, the Dragon King, the dead brides, and the old throne held up not by hunger, but by shared flame. Morvessa screamed and drove her cane toward Leora's heart. Vaelor moved to block it. Liora moved first. She did not strike Morvessa. She opened the shawl. The mourning shawl flew from her shoulders and spread across the chamber like a burning map. Every bride name lit at once. Every false oath turned to witness. The shawl wrapped around Morvessa's cane, then her wrists, then her throat, not choking, only binding. The ash blade died. Morvessa fell to her knees. The throne stopped sinking, but the chain in Vaelor's chest gave one final pull. He gasped. His dragon shadow collapsed to one wing. Ilarion looked at Liora and whispered, "Last hook." Liora turned to Vaelor. The final molten hook still pierced his dragon's heart, and this time, no vow on the wall knew how to free it. The last hook was not made of gold. Liora saw that the moment Ilarion named it. The molten shape piercing Vaelor's dragon heart only looked like metal because the throne had taught pain to wear royal colors. Beneath the fire, beneath the old Draven sigil, beneath the centuries of command, the hook was made from something quieter. A boy's obedience. Vaelor stood beneath the half-suspended throne, one hand still locked around Liora's, his face ashen from the force holding the court above them. His dragon shadow trembled behind him, one wing spread, the other dragged down by the final hook driven through its heart. Morvessa knelt bound in the Mourning Shawl, but she smiled when she saw Liora understand. "There is no bride name for that one," she whispered. "No queen's vow, no dead woman's witness. That hook was given by the king himself." Vaelor's jaw tightened. Liora turned to him. "Is that true?" His eyes stayed on the falling throne. "I was 15. The chamber dimmed. The ash map across Liora's wings shifted, showing the memory without asking permission. A young Vaelor knelt before the throne heart, blood on his lips, black hair falling over frightened eyes he had already learned to harden. His father stood behind him. Morvessa stood at the old king's side, holding the dragonbone cane. "Say it," the old king commanded. The boy looked at the chained dragon shadow writhing behind him. "I am the throne's fire." Again, "I am the throne's fire." "And what does fire do?" Vaelor's young voice broke. Morvessa leaned close and whispered, almost gently, "It burns what the throne names necessary." The boy closed his eyes. "It burns what the throne names necessary." The final hook drove into his dragon heart. The memory vanished. Liora's grip tightened around his hand. Vaelor did not look at her. "I said it." "You were a child. I said it. And now you can unsay it." He gave a bitter breath. "Words do not pull hooks from dragons." "No," Liora said. "Truth does." Above them, the court shouted as more stone cracked. The throne could not hang in the air much longer. The dead brides strained to hold their wing light steady. Ilarion curled near the cradle, its ember body flickering smaller with every breath. Morvessa laughed softly. "Ask him, girl. Ask whether a king can free himself without letting the court fall." Liora looked up. The dragon throne hung over them like judgment. If Vaelor released the hook, his dragonfire might surge uncontrolled. If he held it, the chain would drag him back into the throne heart. Either way, Morvessa had shaped the trap beautifully. A king could save the court or save himself, but not both, unless he stopped believing he was alone. Liora turned toward the 7 brides. "Can you hold the throne?" Avelis's face tightened. "Not without fire." Vaelor heard, "No." Liora ignored the command and looked at Ilarion. "Can you?" The ember dragon lifted its scarred head. "Not hunger," it whispered. "Witness." Liora understood. She raised the grey cradle cloth in one hand and the burning edge of the Mourning Shawl in the other. The cloth was her mother's freedom. The shawl was the bride's witness. Between them stood Vaelor, still carrying a boy's vow as if punishment were proof of kingship. She faced the watching court above. "Listen," she said. Her voice rose through the cracked throne floor into the moon hall. Nobles froze. Guards lowered their weapons. Even those who feared her wings leaned close, because the chamber itself carried her words. The Dragon King was chained as a child. The brides were murdered as witnesses. The throne was taught to hunger by those who feared free blood. Morvessa screamed, "Lies!" The shawl tightened around her. Liora did not look away from the court. If Vaelrith needs sacrifice to stand, then it deserves to fall. But if it can stand on truth, then let truth hold it now. Vaelor turned toward her sharply. The final hook burned brighter. Liora faced him. "Say what you were never allowed to say." His breathing shook. For the first time since she had met him, the Dragon King looked afraid not of burning, but of being heard. "I am not the throne's fire," he said. The chamber cracked with light. The hook loosened. Vaelor's dragon shadow lifted its head. Morvesa fought the shawl. "Do not finish it." Vaelor's eyes stayed on Liora. "I do not burn what the throne names necessary." The hook tore halfway free. Blood-dark fire spilled from his dragon heart. Leora's wings curved around him, but she did not trap the flame. The brides lifted their hands. Ilarion breathed ember light into the cradle. Together, they guided the fire upward. The throne stopped shaking. Vaelor's voice broke on the final truth. "I choose what I protect." The last hook ripped free. His dragon shadow roared, not in pain. In return, black gold fire surged through the bride grave, climbed the dragonbone roots, and wrapped around the falling throne. Leora's ash wings joined it, silver red and fierce. The dead bride's witness light braided through both. For one blinding moment, the dragon throne hung not from chains, but from every truth hidden beneath it. Then it rose, slowly, stone by stone, wing by wing. The throne lifted back into the moon hall above. The court saw Vaelor standing beside Liora, no longer chained, his dragon shadow vast behind him with both wings free. They saw the dead brides behind her. They saw Morvesa bound in the shawl she had used as mourning cloth. They saw Ilarion climb from the old throne heart and curl around the cradle like a guardian instead of a mouth. The old heart collapsed into ash. Morvesa's face emptied. "No," she whispered. "The throne cannot stand without hunger." Vaelor looked at her. "It will learn." The mourning shawl unwrapped from Morvesa's throat and spread wide behind Liora again, not as a burden now, but as a map completed. Across its burning surface, every bride name shone clear. Then one more name appeared. Aureliane Vale. Leora's knees weakened. Vaelor reached for her, then stopped before touching, giving her the choice even now. That restraint nearly broke her. She placed her hand in his, only for balance, only for breath. But the court saw. Morvesa saw too, and hatred flashed through her grief. "You think this ends with freedom?" she said. "The mountain houses will never kneel to an Ashwing heir unless she is bound to the Dragon King." Liora lifted her head. The ash wings opened behind her, bright enough to turn the court above silent. "Then they will learn to stand." The bride grave doors opened. A path of ash and dragon fire rose toward the moon hall. Vaelor looked at Liora. "Are you ready?" "No," she said. A faint, wounded smile touched his mouth. "Neither am I." Together, they walked upward toward the court that had dressed her in mourning. Behind them, Ilarion carried the cradle in its jaws, and inside the cradle, the old free child vow burned like dawn. The court did not cheer when Liora returned. It stared. That was enough. The same nobles who had leaned forward to watch a servant girl humiliated beneath the mourning shawl now stood trapped beneath the risen dragon throne, faces white with ashlight. Some still knelt from fear. Some clutched one another as if the floor might open again. Some looked at Vaelor's freed dragon shadow and forgot how to breathe. But most looked at Liora. The grey-cloaked girl they had mocked had come back from beneath the throne with living ash wings, 7 dead brides behind her, the Dragon King walking at her side, and the old cradle carried in Ilarion's jaws. The ash dragon was no longer monstrous. It was small beside the vast throne hall, but every stone seemed to remember it. Its body glowed ember red beneath ash scales, and where bride bones had once formed its ribs, silver light now shone like healed scars. Ilarion laid the cradle before the black altar. Inside it, Queen Aureliane's stitched vow burned steadily. "No throne may claim a child whose mother named her free." The words rose into the air above the court. No one spoke. Then Morvesa was dragged from the stair by the mourning shawl itself. The cloth no longer covered Liora. It bound the regent's wrists, throat, and cane in bands of grey flame. Not choking, not killing, witnessing. Every bride name shone across it, and with each name, one of the dead women stepped forward from the ashlight behind Liora. Avelis, Marith, Soria, Veliane, Cressa, Nimra, Darlene. The court finally understood that the dead had not come to mourn. They had come to testify. Lord Cerwyn, eldest of the eastern houses, found his voice first. "Your Majesty, what is that creature?" Vaelor looked at Ilarion. The throne, hard as it was before, fear taught it hunger. Another lord whispered, "And the girl?" Liora felt the word girl move through the hall like the last surviving piece of their contempt. Vaelor turned toward the speaker. The temperature dropped, but Liora lifted one hand before he answered. The ash wings behind her shifted, soft but enormous, their edges burning with the map completed by the bride's deaths. Her body ached from carrying them. Her throat still burned where the ash ring rested under her skin. She wanted to sit, to weep, to ask her mother's ghost why freedom had to hurt this much. Instead, she stepped into the center of the hall. "I was brought here as Liora Vale," she said. "A foundling servant, a convenient nobody, a girl whose memories were treated as hunger, whose name was treated as theft." No one moved. She placed one hand on the cradle. "I was born Liora Aureliane Vale, daughter of Queen Aureliane of the Ashwing line, hidden princess of the Western Eyrie, last living heir of the bloodline this court declared dead." A murmur broke through the hall. Morvessa raised her head, eyes hard despite the shawl. "A bloodline that abandoned its duty." Liora looked at her. "A bloodline that refused to be eaten." The mourning shawl tightened. The bride Talon stepped forward. Her restored wing light glowed faintly behind her scarred shoulders. "I carried proof to the regent. She cut my wings and burned my body before the king could hear my warning." The shawl opened a vision above the altar. The entire court watched Morvessa's younger self murder Talon in the bride grave, watched her steal the message, watched her hide the queen's cradle cloth beneath ash and lie to Vaelor for years. Gasps turned to horror. Vaelor stood very still. Morvessa did not denude. She looked at the court instead. "I did what all of you benefited from." That silenced them more completely than denial could have. Morvessa laughed once, bitter and broken. "Do not pretend yourselves clean. Your houses rose after Aureliane fell. Your sons inherited lands that belonged to the Western Eyrie. Your daughters were offered as brides because you wanted to place blood near the dragon throne. You called me cruel because I was willing to do with my hands what you did with your silence." No one answered, because some of it was true. Liora felt the danger in that truth. Morvessa was not asking to be forgiven. She was trying to drag the whole court into guilt, so no one would dare judge her alone. Vaelor stepped forward. "No house will hide behind shared rot," he said. "The records will open. Every oath sworn over the false death of Aureliane Vale will be reviewed before Crown Witness. Every bride, death will be named murder until proven otherwise." The court trembled. Lord Cerwyn stiffened. That could unmake half the realm. Vaelor's dragon shadow spread behind him, vast and black gold. Then half the realm was made wrong. Morvessa smiled faintly. "And there is your war." The words struck the hall. War. Liora saw fear spark from face to face. That was how Morvessa had ruled them. Not with lies alone, but with the terror of what truth might cost. Liora turned to the cradle. The free child vow glowed beneath her hand. "My mother did not name me free so I could burn the realm to prove I survived," she said. "The old oaths will not fall in one night, but neither will they remain buried." Vaelor looked at her. She felt his attention like heat at her side. Liora faced the nobles. "Each house will bring its records. Each bride name will be restored. Each stolen wing, ring, dowry, land, and vow will be heard. Not by Morvessa, not by frightened councils, by witness." Avelis lifted her hand. Silver ash swirled above the altar. The mourning shawl rose from Morvessa and stretched wide, becoming a burning canopy of names and paths. "The shawl will remain in the dragon court," Liora said, "not as mourning, as record. The 7 brides bowed their heads. Vaelor's voice came low beside her. And the Ashwing heir? The hall held its breath. There it was. The question Morvessa had wanted to turn into a cage. Would Liora become bride, queen, threat, property, proof? She looked at Vaelor. He did not step closer. He did not claim her before the court. He waited. That waiting was more intimate than any vow. Liora turned back to the hall. The Ashwing heir belongs to no throne that has not earned her trust. A shock passed through the nobles. Vaelor lowered his head once. Not wounded. Accepting. Morvessa's face twisted. Then they will never kneel. Liora looked at the woman bound in the witness light of 7 murdered brides. Good, she said. I did not come back to be knelt to. I came back to stop being buried. The Ashwings beat once. Every candle in the dragon court turned white. Ilarion curled around the cradle and exhaled a ring of ember light. The dragon throne, no longer sinking, cracked across its black surface, not broken, changed. A space opened beside it. Not a lesser seat, not a bride's chair. An empty place waiting to be built. Vaelor saw it. So did the court. The throne had not claimed Liora. It had made room. Morvessa screamed then, a raw, final sound, and lunged against the shawl with all the black ash left in her blood. The binding snapped halfway. Her cane cracked open, revealing a blade made from the stolen tip of an ashwing bone. She drove it toward the cradle, toward the vow. Vaelor moved. Liora moved faster. Her living wings closed around the cradle, the vow, and the blade. Black ash pierced through flame, and Liora heard her mother's voice whisper, "Now choose what kind of fire you become. Now choose what kind of fire you become." Her mother's voice moved through the ashwings like breath through a dying flame. Liora stood with the stolen ashwing bone driven through the fire at her back, the cradle behind her, the old vow burning beneath her protection. Pain opened from shoulder to spine. Not the pain of skin tearing, but of memory being asked whether it would become a weapon or a wound. Morvessa pushed harder on the blade. "Burn," she hissed. "That is all your line ever did." Leora's hands closed around the edge of the cradle. For one heartbeat, she wanted to. She wanted to let the wings blaze outward and turn Morvessa's lies, the court's silence, the cruel altar, and every noble mouth that had laughed at her into ash. The power was there. The shawl remembered 7 deaths. Ilarion remembered hunger. Vaelor's dragonfire stood ready beside her, furious enough to answer any flame she called. But her mother had not named her free so she could become another throne's punishment. Liora breathed through the pain. "No," she whispered. The ash wings did not explode. They opened. Every feather became a page of living fire. The blade in Morvessa's hand stopped moving. The stolen wingbone began to glow, and from inside it came Talen's voice, clear and fierce. "Returned." The bone shattered into silver ash. Morvessa stumbled back. The mourning shawl surged from the air and wrapped around her again, tighter than before. This time it did not bind only her body. It bound the false titles clinging to her name: Regent, Keeper, Protector, Law. One by one, those titles burned away. The court watched Lady Morvessa Thorne fall to her knees as nothing more than the woman who had murdered brides and called it necessity. Vaelor stepped forward, sword raised. Liora looked at him. He stopped. That single pause changed the whole. The Dragon King, freed from his chain, still burning with the power to end Morvessa in one stroke, waited for the woman she had tried to kill to choose the judgment. Liora turned back to Morvessa. "I will not burn you for silence," she said. "You will live inside witness." The shawl tightened across Morvessa's mouth, then released enough for breath. "Every bride name you buried will be spoken in your hearing," Liora said. "Every record you sealed will be opened by your hand. Every house you protected with lies will look at you and know what their peace cost." Morvessa's eyes filled with hatred. Liora did not look away. "And if you lie again, the shawl will answer before the court." The mourning shawl flared white. Judgment accepted. The nobles bowed their heads, but Liora knew better than to trust bowed heads. Fear bent quickly. Truth had to be built. Vaelor faced the court. By dawn, the bride records open. By the next moon, every oath sworn over Aureliane Vael's death will be brought before witness. Any house that hides a record will be named enemy of the dragon throne. A lord near the eastern banners swallowed. And the ash-wing heir? Vaelor looked at Liora. He did not answer for her. Liora felt the weight of the whole settle on her shoulders. Not the shawl, not the wings, but expectation. They wanted a title because titles were safer than people. Princess, bride, queen. Threat. She placed one hand over the ash ring at her throat. "I will take back my mother's name," she said. "I will take back the dead bride's names. I will take back the truth hidden under this throne. But I will not be bound tonight by crown, court, or marriage flame." The words cut through the hall. Some nobles looked relieved. Others looked more afraid. Vaelor only lowered his head. Not in defeat. In respect. Ilarion crawled from the cradle and stood between them, small and ember-bright. The old throne heart was gone. In its place, the ash dragon carried the first pact inside its chest, no longer hungry, no longer fed by bride death. It touched its snout to the floor before Liora, then before Vaelor. Not kneeling, remembering. The dragon throne groaned behind them. The black seat cracked again, widening the space beside it. Silver ash filled the fracture, shaping not a second throne yet, but a foundation. A place that could become one, if earned. Liora looked at it and felt no triumph. Only the enormity of a future that would not be simple. Vaelor came to stand beside her, close enough that she felt the warmth of his freed dragon, far enough that no one could mistake his presence for a claim. "You could have burned her," he said quietly. "I know. Why didn't you?" Liora watched Morvessa being taken by guards whose hands shook when they touched the witness shawl. "Because my mother made me free," she said, "not cruel." Vaelor's silence was deep. Then he said, "And what will you do with freedom, Liora Aureliane Vael?" Her full name in his mouth did not sound like possession. It sounded like an open door. She turned to him. His face was still controlled, still dangerous, still marked by years of believing love made him lethal. But his eyes no longer carried the hollow obedience of a chained king. "I will learn what was stolen from me," she said. "I will decide what kind of crown, if any, deserves my wings, and you." His chasa held hers. "You will prove your throne can protect without consuming." A faint, painful smile touched his mouth. "That may take longer than one dawn." "Good," she said. "I do not trust easy vows." For the first time, something almost like warmth moved through his expression. Not softness, promise. The 7 dead brides began to fade as dawn pressed against the high windows. One by one, they passed their light into the mourning shawl until the cloth no longer looked grey. It shimmered with ash, silver, and living gold, a record of every woman who had refused to let Liora disappear. Talyn was the last to fade. She touched Leora's cheek with fingers made of smoke. "Live loudly," she whispered. Then she was gone. The hall remained silent. Liora lifted the shawl from the altar and placed it over her own shoulders. This time, it did not weigh like mourning. It settled like wings remembering their shape. Vaelor opened the great doors of the dragon court himself. Outside, the first sun rose over Vaelrith, touching the black towers, the broken banners, the mountain passes waiting for war or judgment. Liora stepped into the light with ash wings folded behind her and the Dragon King beside her, not as bride, not as servant, not as sacrifice, as the last ash-wing heir who had been dressed in mourning and returned with living wings. Behind them, the dragon throne burned clean for the first time in 17 years.